When it's spit, gotta hit him like.
Hey, and welcome to iHeart Chronicles of Ron. I am your host, Alan J. Campbell, aka the Batman. Hey, we are going to dive right into tonight's topic, guilty. Okay, for those who've been hiding under a rock for the last 6 months, Amber Geiger, the former Dallas police officer, pretty much has been in the news, who was accused of shooting her upstairs neighbor. The gist of everything is that her story is that she thought she was in her own apartment, and Botham Jean was an intruder. Botham Jean was in his own apartment when Amber Geiger came into his apartment and shot him and said that he was an intruder. Now, fast forward to that. Let's skip past that part and go directly to the trial part of this. I think the district attorney did an excellent job of prosecuting this former cop, an excellent job. And not only that, but they did an excellent job, let me rephrase that. They did a fantastic job of with their closing arguments. And just to give people an idea of how a trial operates, okay, and this is if you have a jury trial. Okay, so at the beginning of the trial, they open or they say opening statements. The prosecution comes out and they paint this individual as the worst possible individual on the face of the earth, which is what they're supposed to do. And then the defense, and then that's the opening arguments or opening statements. Then the defense attorney, they present their argument. Okay, this, and then we go from there. So the prosecution lays out all of their evidence right then and there for the jury to see and hear. Okay, and most instances, sometimes when we're the way that we're designed, we're geared, or our genetic makeup is that sometimes some things we hear. Well, the first thing we hear, we believe it to be true. And sometimes the most horrific things that we hear, we automatically assume that this happened without hearing the full details of everything from the other side. I always say there's two stories. There's two sides. There's a story, and then there's the truth. It's up to you on which one you're going to believe. Now, the prosecution laid out their case, and they laid it out very, very well. Short of saying it was circumstantial, they pretty much felt that they had a slam dunk case for a murder conviction. Okay. Now, when that happens, and so the prosecution presents their case, and so when the prosecution rests, then the defense, they present their argument. Then you get to a point to where both sides, where they say prosecution rests and the defense rests. Now, at this particular point, now you go to what they call closing arguments, because remember I said you have opening statements or opening arguments, and then closing statements or closing arguments. Now, what happens is that the prosecution naturally starts out with creating the image of the person that was killed. And let me and just so to give you more background, murder or homicide, meaning, and to breaking it down, homicide means the death of one by another without legal or just cause. Okay. Homo meaning human, side, death. Okay. Homicide. Now, when the prosecution has presented when they begin their closing arguments, they create the image of this individual as if they were still there. The prosecution is the voice for the dead. They speak for the dead. And so the prosecution creates this image of this person who once was full of life and vigor, and now their life is gone, taken away by someone who had no just cause or legal right to do. And most instances, what they will do too, they will put up what they call a life and death, put up life and death pictures. They will put up a picture of what this individual was look like in life, and then they will present a picture of this person in death. Meaning you're going to see a picture of someone possibly from a school photo, a job photo, personal pictures from their phone or family members, but then you're looking at the crime scene photos of this individual in death, which is sometimes can be horrific. Okay, and to really hammer this home, they showed this picture of this man laying in his own living room, bleeding to death until the point and dying and died on his living room floor with a bowl of ice cream on the table and the TV playing. Okay, if you're a juror, if I'm a juror, that's you kind of look over at the defense's table and look at this person. You're looking at the person that or the decedent, and you're looking over at this person who did this, and you kind of your mind kind of goes into overdrive. So that being said, now the judge at this particular point, this case goes to the jury. The judge instructs the jury gives the jury instructions on how to proceed. Now, let's make no mistake. Most people who are put on the jury pool are completely laymen, or some of them are complete goofballs or knuckleheads, or have no idea on how the system actually works because they've probably been watching some of the wrong television shows and they assume this is how it happens. No, the judge gives you instructions based upon this particular crime that Amber Geiger was indicted for, charged and indicted on, was murder. The judge gave them to consider gave them three different options to consider. They were told to consider the charge of murder, the charge of manslaughter, or what they call man one, or consider, now this is little known, but it is in the law books that it can be used. It is called castle, meaning, and I'll get into that portion about the castle defense later. But she gave them instructions to consider this. First of all, in order to convict someone of murder, you must prove intent. Okay. Amber Geiger got on the stand and her own words convicted her. Her own words were, I had to kill him because I thought he was going to kill me. Okay. Her own words were, I'm going to kill him. Her own words. Not only that, but she violated so many different police procedures and policies on encountering an open door and an intruder. You are taught, and for most people who don't understand law enforcement procedure, when you come to an open door or procedure, law enforcement procedure, when you come you encounter an open door. Okay, and once again, this is not television. This is not Chicago. This is not a television show to where you just bust in and then you corner the bad guy or you shoot the bad guy, whatever the case may be. No, there's policies and procedures. And in most instances throughout the United States, if a individual or a police officer encounters an open door or or an intruder suspect, they are to retreat and call for backup. Amber Geiger did not do that. But going off something that Georgia said 2 weeks ago, remember now we have to understand this is Sweet Polly purebred, and she's and the unfortunate part, there are a lot of women who are police officers sometimes get this Napoleon complex that they have something to prove. So I'm going to rush in and be the person to save the day. And in her limited thinking, she's playing the race card, white entitlement. Hey, I'm going to go in and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be a hero because I caught a burglar. I caught a intruder in what I thought was my apartment. My apartment. It didn't turn out that way. It did not turn out that way at all. In fact, this turned into a colossal shit show for her. And not only that, but for the Dallas Police Department. Remember now, Dallas is the same place where they couldn't protect the president of the United States, who got a sunroof on November 22nd, 1963, and the Dallas Police Department bungled that job. How do this is the proverbial fumbling the football on the 1 yard line, and the defensive team scoops it up and runs back 99 yards for the winning score. This is indicative of Dallas Police Department. Now, with Amber Geiger, and she's sitting there, and the jury goes in, and so when the jury's been instructed what they can consider, okay. Now, a couple of jurors, and some of them even said this on a couple of news outlets, that they pretty much had already made up their mind that they were going to come back with a guilty verdict based on Amber Geiger's own admission that she intended on killing this person. And remember what I said: in order to prove murder, in order to convict for murder, you have to prove intent. She intended, her own words. She intended to kill this person. But instead of retreating and gathering her thoughts and gathering all the information to see where she actually was, this man was in his own apartment. Once again, watching television, eating a bowl of ice cream. The most unheard of thing, the most craziest thing I've ever heard of. Her words also, he advanced at me. Once again, at what point do you realize you are not in your own apartment? I'm not buying it. I am not buying that bullshit about, I thought I was in my apartment. I thought, how many people have gone to a location, or for a good example, if anyone's ever grew up in the projects, you knew that all that certain project homes, certain buildings, all of them were alike. There's just no way that you would have gotten off on a floor and not realize you were not on your floor, and not see something that kind of clicked in your head. Say, oh, shoot, I'm on the wrong floor. Let me get back on. Nobody ever has gotten off on the wrong floor and then went into somebody else's apartment and realized, oh, wow, hey, somebody's in my apartment. No. As a police officer, you're trained. Well, let me go back. It is the assumption that with the training that police officers receive, you are taught to be cognitive of your surrounding. And I'm gonna go a little slower when I say that, because I know I'm using a lot of big words on my show, as I always do. But the idea is, like we said with our tagline, feed your brain. We can't continue to live in the dark ages. But just to bring some of you all along, there's no way that she could not be aware of you're taught to be aware of your surroundings as a police officer. Aware of your surroundings. This falls up under not paying attention to what you are doing, where you are. And this is what it was. And not to mention, she was distracted because she was texting her partner boyfriend with explicit messages and things of that nature. So she wasn't focused. Still not a defense. Now, when the judge gave the instructions, hey, consider murder or consider manslaughter. Now, with manslaughter, it's easier to get a conviction for manslaughter because you don't have to the criteria is not as high. All you need to do is prove negligence to get a conviction for manslaughter, such as to give you a better example. If say you're driving a car and somebody decides Well, hey, they want to sit on the hood of your car while you're driving. Okay, and you let them do it. Then all of a sudden you stop. All of a sudden they fall off the car, and then you run over them. You run over them and kill them. That's not murder, because that was, you didn't intend to that. You didn't intend to kill them. But it is negligence because your actions caused their death. Your actions. They slid off the hood of the car and rolled underneath, and you ran them over, and they rolled up like like a gooey stick of gum underneath the car and everything, and you killed them. That's manslaughter, because there is no intent. Now, the other thing that they were allowed to consider is what they call the castle defense. The castle defense falls upon it. It's another form of stand your ground law, meaning that if you're in your house, meaning the term castle, when they broke it, when they explain how it's translated, I should say, or interpreted, meaning that a man's home is his castle, and you have the right to defend that at all costs. This is the one of the things that they were allowed to, what they wanted to, that well, the defense attorney wanted them to consider, but they couldn't consider that. And the judge, I agree with the judge on not allowing that to go into play, because she was not in her own home, she was in someone else's home, and so technically she could have been considered an intruder in his home. Technically, she could have been considered that. Now, when she entered this man's home, this man had every right to shoot her or to defend his home, because then he could use what they call the castle defense, because he is confronting an intruder in his home, which would have been Amber Geiger. And had he killed her, now let's just say for the sake of argument that did happen, what would have been the outcome for this guy if he had have killed her when she came into his part? It may have been a different ball game. But make no mistake, Amber Geiger was an intruder in this and Botham Jean's home. She was an intruder. Point blank, period. There's no way around it. Now, when the jury came back, and the jury, they took roughly about 18 to 20 hours to come back with a verdict of guilty of murder. Okay. A lot of people were upset. People were happy with the verdict. Okay. And even the family spokesperson, he came out, he made a statement and said that this was needed. This was needed because this hopefully sets the tone or changes the culture of policing. And when they said policing, that people are no longer, and I said this 2 weeks last week on my last time on my show, that we have to understand that people are no longer afraid of the police. They're no longer afraid to testify against police. The trial of Jason Van Dyke changed the landscape of that. And I guarantee you, I guarantee you, sure as I'm sitting here, sure as you are born, sure as what my name is and your name is, sure as $10 to a bag of shit, that they are going to wind up the police. You're going to find that more and more police officers, and I mean active police officers, are going to be convicted of various crimes, because people are sick and tired of police officers doing things and getting away with it, or juries being afraid to convict police officers because they have been culturally conditioned that police officers can do no wrong. Just a sidebar for a moment. There are two right now. Two Chicago police officers right now who are on trial in federal court for committing crimes while on duty and in uniform and with badges. They are on trial for committing crimes, committing armed robberies. Armed robberies. They are on trial right now. And the superintendent came out, he made a statement, and he was very, very adamant about how he felt about the integrity of these two individuals. And at the same time, he's trying. This doesn't help with building the bridge of police and community, and closing the gap between police and community when you have when you got jokers like this out there doing this kind of nonsense. Eddie Johnson goes on to say that he is disgusted and appalled, and if these allegations prove to be true, he wants his stars back. They don't deserve to wear them, and it completely destroys what wearing that star stands for. And I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. When you become law enforcement, you become a police officer, and you put that star on, you are supposed to represent something. You are supposed to represent one. You are supposed to be one of the good guys. That's what this is all about. Amber Geiger missed the whole understanding. Hey, welcome to iHeart Intellectual Radio, the Chronicles of Rohn. Who do I have on the phone and where are you calling from?
This is Jay from Georgia.
Hey, what's happening in Georgia? So
All right.
I'm sure that I'm sure you've gotten an earful about this whole deal. Hold your point. So to go into so I can let people know that what the sentence that she got in Amber Geiger. Now she got 10 years, 10-year prison sentence. But we have to understand something. When a person is convicted, especially what they call a first time offender, a first time offender is allowed. They are allowed some form of leniency. Now the prosecution asked for 28 years. They weren't going to get it. They can ask for it, but that's up to the judge. The judge. At the end of the day, the judge has the ultimate say so. The end all say all. And she could have agreed with the 28 years, but I think she erred on the side of caution because she didn't want this to be kicked back and when she files her appeal to say that this was what they call cruel and unusual punishment. Now I'm fine with the 10-year sentence. I would have said maybe 15 and she'd have done 7, but under the law, she has to do 50% of her sentence, which gives her 5 years. 5 years on that. And as the spokesperson for the family said, this will change the culture of policing and how the judicial system treats police officers and how this is done. But go ahead. I know I got a couple of things that we're gonna get into, but go ahead, Georgia.
Well, I unfortunately adamantly disagree with you. First thing is, this was, in my opinion, an assassination, period. Anytime you are within the boundaries of your own home and someone comes in and murders you in your own home, that's an assassination, period. Now, we can go back and forth over the logistics of, well, she didn't think she was in the right apartment. She got confused. She got all of that. But one thing we do know definitively is from the court testimonies of several witnesses, no verbal commands were given that anyone could make out. There was no action of the officer to retreat from the situation. There was no action taken by this officer to avert this sort of tragic, definitive action that they took, period. That is a absolute fact. There's no manipulation, translation, or interpretation to that fact. This is an officer who has been through extensive hours of training, extensive hours of negotiation and hostility, or how to downgrade people who are in hostile environments and in hostile situations. And here it is that you finish one 13-hour shift, and excuse my French, your cheese slides off the wrong side of the cracker, and you killing everybody. That's a problem. So that says that either you've gotten poor training or you are not in the right frame of mind continue to wear this particular badge. So you are a threat to public safety. And to that, I definitely believe that murder one was the correct charge. I disagree with the Sambo judge that we have, who decided to show leniency and just good old Jesus gonna fix it, let us all kumbaya and come together. I have a problem with that because I would love to see her record as it relates to some of the drug offenses and some of the other murder trials that she has presided over.
I agree.
If she showed that same level of come to Jesus, let's let it fix it, and let's just come together, and here's my Bible, because you're going to need it, baby, because he's going to help you get through. I would love to see how many other defendants who were found guilty in her courtroom received this same level of
compassion,
extraordinary compassion and consideration for their soul to be saved.
Right.
I have a problem with that.
Now, hold your point, because I don't want to get too far ahead. Now, for those who are not fully brought up to speed on the story, as George is saying, during the entire sentencing process, during the sentencing phase, the judge who presided over the case, Tammy Kemp, decided to come down off the bench. This was right after Botham Jean's brother asked to give the defendant a hug. Okay, which is totally fine, which is not unheard of, and the brother had forgiven this woman who killed had killed his brother. He's made peace with that. This happened. Okay, effort, move on. We got to go. We got to go. But I agree with what you're saying. This is totally unethical, impractical, and the fact that you come down off the bench and you give this white woman, Sweet Polly Purebred, a hug, and you hand her your personal Bible. You hand this woman your personal Bible and says, don't worry, you're going to need it. As you said, Jesus going to work it out. Jesus going to help you get through this, so on and so forth. And I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying on. Let's look at Tammy Kemp's record on how many defendants that she come down off the bench and hand a Bible to, and giving some people and make no mistake, giving some people some Buck Rogers time. Did you hand them a Bible? I mean, because make no mistake, if you give them somebody a Buck Rogers time, you give them somebody a sentence of 200 years, which makes it 2200. We're not using Bibles anymore. We got little thumb pilots and things of that nature where we can look it up. We're not handing that out anymore. But at the same time, not only is this not only unethical, but it's inappropriate. Make no mistake.
It is not unethical.
It's inappropriate.
It's improper and it's inappropriate. Here's the other problem. Everybody in the courtroom, from the bailiffs, the female bailiffs, giving her all type of comfort and compassion, helping her put her hair down. Let's just fix your hair, make sure you look good, make sure you're in the proper poise. All of that sort of behavior on already. He was dead on the scene. Okay? But to save face and to not screw this investigation up thoroughly, you give the action that we're still resuscitating him so that he can technically be pronounced dead. Key word is pronounced dead at a medical facility. Okay? We have to understand these terms and understand how this stuff affects everything that's going on. They also have altered the reports that now show that Amber Geiger did go through a toxicology screen, which is inaccurate. That is also false, because the initial report, which came out approximately 4 days after the shooting, said she had not. But they had already ran Botham Jean's toxicology report and had determined that he had seeds of bud and trace amounts of marijuana or THC in his system. See, this is what America does. America is not about justice. It is about the field is the most valuable, period, point blank. That's what they're going to do. And the police officers are the saviors. They can't be the villains. I would recommend that your listeners go to YouTube and look up some of the actual court footage, some of the trial footage that shows some of the footage that the Texas Rangers acquired and some of the stuff that Dallas PD acquired, which actually shows them doing a walkthrough of the apartment, maybe 2 or 3 days later, where you see the literal timestamp that this person was literally snatched away out of their own life, in their own home. You see a bowl still with remnants of food in it, uneaten. You see remnants of bloody towel still in the middle of a floor. You see other little remnants of his computer still being open, and this dude is just watching YouTube at the house, looking at Kennedy's conspiracy stuff. That's still on the screen. And I think it's important because many times the humanity of the person, especially if they're black, is removed. So it's easier for you to validate their extinction. And as I've said in several instances before, once you remove the humanity from a situation, it's easy to do what you want with it. If you don't believe me, think about what they did to the Indians and the Native Americans. The Native Americans, including ourselves, because we're the Aborigines, were always considered hostile savages. Hostile savages. And see, so now that narrative works, then you are never, ever on a situation where you're trying to negotiate some sort of agreement. You're just going to take it. Because why? In your mind, it has already been established that this is a hostile. You have removed the humanity of it from the situation. And that's what America has become a very good manipulator of, removing the humanity of a situation and then placing it where we want so that you can feel our empathy, where we choose or decide where you should have it. And they've done an extremely good job on black doing that. We're better than Pavlov's dog in that regard. So I'm saying this thing is extremely volatile and it's not over. I would not be surprised if 2 or 3 more bodies pop in relationship to this case. Dallas Police Department, Dallas in general, particularly their police department, please understand, as you said earlier, this was the same police department that fumbled an international presidential assassination coup. Fumbled it. This was also the same police department that fumbled another incident dealing with Black Lives Matter several years ago. This is the same police department where the police chief and the judge are sorority sisters. So there's all type of levels of improper behavior that is just synonymous with, it's, as they say, it's almost incestuous. So how can you expect a fair trial or justice to be served? The judge is friends with everybody.
Well, let me throw this in here. Well, from you know, and from a legal standpoint. From a legal standpoint, I believe that the trial was as fair as it was going to get. It was as fair.
The trial was fair as it can get. I honestly think that the prosecution did an absolutely astonishing job. My problem is the judge. The judge, in my opinion, we have to understand that everybody that looks like us is not for us.
Oh no, I agree with you. Now, definitely will say I second that motion. I definitely will say yes. That is absolutely right. It's like in what I do. And in acting and everything else that I do. Sometimes we'll get sideways and we'll talk to people, or you'll get someone to come up to me. I get someone to come up and say, well, you know what, hey, come on, brother, you can look out, come on, man, you can look out for a brother, or you can, kind of cut me some slack. Make no mistake, just because we happen to share the same skin color, that doesn't mean that I'm for you, or I'm gonna do anything that I'm for, or for you. I'm not obligated to do anything with you or for you. I'm not obligated to do any of these things. I have a job to do. Your skin color means absolutely nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. Point blank, period. In what I do, and that's acting and managing, everyone is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, green, checkerboard, stripe, or Martian. Doesn't matter. Makes no difference to me. But I'm not going to come over. I'm not going to come down off. If I'm a sitting judge, there's no way in hell I'm coming down off the bench and I'm giving a defendant a pep talk on their way to the boom boom room. Not happening. I gave them this sentence because they needed this is what the law required me to do. Now, I hope truthfully, I hope that she gets sanctioned and even remove, not so much as remove from the bench, but remove from hearing any type of serious cases, murder cases. Send her down to juvie. Send her over to traffic or DUI, so where she can't do any real harm. That in itself was the most inappropriate thing I thought that I could have ever witnessed. You come down off the bench, you give her your personal Bible, you give her a hug, and you say to her, everything's gonna be all right. And just another point, if you are a judge, or even better, let me go biblical right quick. In Romans, in the book of Romans, it says that the man does not carry the sword in vain. He is there to execute God's justice. Period. He does not carry the sword in vain. He is there to execute God's justice, which means that which means that he is impartial in what he is doing. This judge showed a level of partiality. And I'm curious, and like you said, I'm curious on how many other defendants did she do this to. Now, the other thing is that when people asked her this question, and she was asked, and people asked people that she was people in her inner circle, they asked, hey, this is a little odd. What's going on with that? Oh, well, that's just her way of doing things. She comes in the office, she's always saying, God bless you, and may the Lord be with you. She's throwing out her spiritual beliefs and everything, blah blah blah, and she's a Christian woman, and that's just how she does. She just shows a level of compassion. Here's where I have a problem with that. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. That means that once you took on this, you're supposed to rule in a manner, execute justice in a manner that is that's in accordance to your beliefs. But there's a point to where, hey, you don't come down off the bench and do this. You do not do it. If you were going to give some form of leniency, fine. It's within your discretion to do that. Fine. Well, I don't agree with the 28-year sentence, prosecutor. I'm going to overrule that. I'm going to say I'm going to give her 12 years. Okay. That's No. Well,
How many times
I agree.
have you been that compassionate toward another type person?
No,
Someone who didn't fit this level of profile.
right. I agree. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's the point, and I have a problem with that also. I have a serious problem with that because this in itself sets precedence on other defendants who may have come before her and had filed an appeal for something lesser than what Amber Geiger got convicted of, but they got a Buck Rogers sentence. And this heifer didn't come down off the bench and shake his hand and say, "Good luck on your way to the booty house. Oh, by the way, here's some comic books. Here's some comic books, money for your commissary. Oh, and a Bible." I'm sure she didn't do that. I totally agree with what you're saying. I totally agree with that. But it goes back to what we've often said. Once again, people, we really have to expand our mind and understand that, remember, when the Constitution was written and the justice system was in place, it did not have our black asses in mind. We were an afterthought on it, if we were even that. It doesn't apply to us, and we have to understand that this was written for white people by white people for white privileges.
But here's what's interesting about that. And here's a piece of food for thought that we need to, in my opinion, take back from this entire displacement of power. If you look at history, particularly American history, now here it is, the Constitution gave no provision and gave no recognition to the term black people.
Correct.
And so when the Constitution makes no designation or no sort of consideration for a group of people, technically your lawyers will tell you those sections of people are what they call dead under the law.
Dead, right, correct.
Okay? So it's really interesting that even in 2019, we are technically, as black people, because if you notice, see, when we were Negroes, we had civil rights. Now that we're black people, we have no rights. And we have to be very clear about that. There is no provision for black people under the guise of the Constitution and the civil statutes of law in any county, in any jurisdiction. Look it up. So technically, because of that, you are the walking, living dead under the law with no protection.
With none.
Now, here is the interesting part about that. But you were the first one to give your life and to give your blood for the freedom and liberation of this country from the crown. Look that up. The first person to be shot and killed at the Boston Tea Party was a black man, Crispus
Attucks. Yep.
Now, here's another interesting fact about that as well. The Boston Tea Party was a false flag that
the first
false flag, well, actually the second, but it was a false flag that they did in an attempt to stop the British from raising their taxes on tea and molasses and other goods. And I say it's a false flag because these perpetrators dressed up as Indians or Native Americans and raided these ships, raided the British, killed a few of them, caused all type of havoc, threw tea overboard. But they did all of this under the guise of looking like someone else so that they could avoid taking on the actual heat of their actions directly.
Well, avoid prosecution.
Well, of course. But doesn't that sound familiar?
Right. We're here. Right. And once again, here we are in 2019 with the same thing. And not to, and I'm glad you mentioned that and go for it because we got about 3 more minutes. This is the same thing to where when we talk about these situations going on in the inner city of the level of gun violence, the level of crime, there are people that are being sent, they're purposely being sent in to create this environment. They're called agitators. To do this false flagging, what they call in magic, it's called sleight of hand. You see this over here, but actually everything is going on right here. I'm gonna show you this, but this is what the real deal is. I'm gonna show you this, but this is the real deal. This is what's going on right over here. Hey, don't look over there. No, look at this right here. That's what's actually happening. And this is what white America does, huh?
This is a consistent challenge.
It's a consistent. And
here's the other thing. This is the last thing. And they, on the other side of that, they now brutalize the victim.
Yes.
Everything that they do is a diversion to themselves or from themselves, diversion from themselves, and then now places the victim as the villain.
Right, but this is nothing new. This has been going on since the European, since they got off the boat, since the Europeans got off the boat. Since they got off the boat. But hey, George, I appreciate you calling in as always, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you calling. Love when you call in, because you always are so full of knowledge and help us expound on certain things that we may be completely oblivious to. Either oblivious, or we choose to be oblivious to. It's one or the other. There is no third. Either you are, or you choose to be.
Right. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot. Hey, as I said before, we have to look at this for what it really is. We really, really do. And this particular case, hopefully that this case kind of sways everything towards changing the culture of policing and how it goes. Oh, we missed it. Okay. Well, okay. Well, right. But anyway, yeah. Hey, welcome to our Heart Intellectual Radio, the Chronicles of Rohn. Who do I have on the phone, and where are you calling from? And just so to be careful, just so that we know. Hello?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes, sir.
All right. Pensacola, Florida. Kazan.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, we're running up to about 2.5 minutes, so let's go.
All right, make this real fast. All right, keep in mind, I like the way that language changed at the end of you and brother Jacob there in Georgia were speaking. They're not white people. They're Europeans. Keep that in mind. We are not black people, okay? But black is an adjective that describes or modifies a noun. It is not the noun. On to this case. One thing the sister judge kind of crossed me up with, I could go in on this a lot deeper, but I just want to end it with this. I thought sisters didn't like side chicks.
Say what? Okay. I'm sorry, repeat that?
I said, I always thought that sisters don't like side chicks, and Amber was a side chick. Okay, sister, she hey, man, I wish I had more time to go in on this. My goodness, but anyway, just do the time. Yeah, man. I thought sisters didn't like side chicks. I also know that the judge had evidence when the prosecution was trying to put in the evidence her comments she made on the Martin Luther King parade earlier that year.
Right. I recall that. I do recall, because I'm not to interrupt you. But yeah, there were a lot of things that were presented, and like, once again, I have to give kudos, and I have to commend the prosecution. They did this the right way. This wasn't a white on black crime. This was one person. See, the murder is about assigning blame. Homicide is assigning blame, and this is what their job was. We don't care who you are, what you do. You did this, and we're going to give everything we have to make sure that we get what we want. And a lot of the things that she said in her posts, her texts, well, yeah, they were derogatory. But when we say she's a racist, we can argue that back and forth. But at the same time, the end of the day, we got what we wanted, was a conviction of a active police officer, which I believe is going to change the tide and change the culture of how police officers carry themselves, and this also puts prosecuting attorneys on notice that, hey, you can prosecute police officers and win these cases. People are no longer afraid of getting up there, and even sometimes it may be a little shaky, but they're no longer afraid to do this, because there has to be a point and level where we have to start holding these people accountable for their actions. It doesn't matter whether
make sure our people understand that sometimes, these things do come with consequences. I know we don't have enough time, but look at Joshua Brown, the dude, the across the way neighbor of Bochum. Dead. I mean, he's dead now.
Right.
Him out,